At least in this room.
Okay, so Melvin, Arline, Paul, 3 siblings. Would you please tell me what you remember about your grandparents on your father's side?
Okay, our grandfather's name was Avrum, and Adolf was the English name that they gave him. It was Avrum Adolf Laub. And I don't know the year he was born, but he married our grandmother Ethel Nettie Goodman, and they had 5 children, and they were Marcus, who to my recall was born on June 7th, 1893, and then there was Molly was next, and then there was Fanny, and William and Lottie. And shall I tell you first about Marcus?
Yeah, please.
Okay.
Well, what do you know about Adolf?
Adolf is not part of the Laub family. That's the part of the Eichenbaum family. We're talking about the Laub family now.
Avram, who...
Oh, you're talking about Adolf Laub.
Yeah.
That's all I know. I've told you all I know about him.
All you know is his name? You don't know where he was from or where he came from?
Oh, yeah, he was born from Austria. He was born in Austria, Vienna. Oh, wait, no, I'm sorry. Romania.
No, you were right.
Austria, Romania.
He was born in Wien, which is Vienna, Österreich, which was the Austrian-Hungarian Empire. Right? So that's where he was born.
Okay, I understood it was Romania.
And when did he come to America, or what did he do when he was in Europe?
I don't know what he did, but, and I don't know exactly what year they came to Ellis Island. I know they went to St. Louis, Missouri when they came to the United States. And Grandpa Laub was a sheet metal worker. This is all my recall from stories that I was told by my grandparents and other relatives.
Can I step in for a second to get to that spot? During that time, there were pogroms in Romania and throughout the Austro-Hungarian Empire that were anti-Jewish, and Jews fled in the early 1900s to America. He worked, as I remember, as a car mechanic, and I think I got that from a census that was taken at that time. As I understood it, he went to St. Joe, Missouri, not St. Louis, Missouri. I don't know why that would matter, but I know that Dad had a hard time there and didn't think much of the place. Go ahead.
Okay, he worked for U.S. Steel Company, and we know because later on we got insurance from them. Our dad was probably about 6 years old.
So we're on your father now, not your grandfather.
Now that's as much as I know of our grandfather.
Okay.
Now I'm talking about Marcus Laub, his oldest son,
Okay.
and our father.
I want to add one other thing. I believe he was born in 1868, if I remember correctly, which was just after the Civil War.
You're talking about Adolf.
About our grandfather.
Okay.
Our grandfather,
And he died.
Avrum.
Yeah, and he died in 1927.
Okay.
Yep. So you can go ahead and
Okay.
tell us about Marcus.
No, that's all. I've stated all the things I know about our grandfather.
Okay.
That grandfather. Okay. I will tell you some things that I remember hearing from my father.
Mm-hmm.
You remember what the grandfather looked like, according to
No, I never saw that grandfather.
Okay.
We
No.
have those pictures.
No, he died before I was born, I think. He said 1927. I was born in 1931.
Yeah, but we have those pictures. I have pictures.
Oh, yeah, I have a picture of Grandpa, too.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. When our dad was 6 years old, our dad told me that when he was 6 years old, he sold newspapers in the corner in St. Louis. And that they used to say, Maxie Laub is a Christ killer. That's just something our dad told us. When he was in the 4th grade, his father died. That's what I remember Dad telling me. And he had to quit school and help and start working to help the family because he was the oldest. And then when Dad was about 17, 18, he went into the First World War. He was an engineer. He built bridges. He was in 2 fronts, one in France, one in Belgium. This may not be important, but he had a girlfriend named Arline in France. And that's where I got the spelling of my name. Okay, when he came out of the service, he used to send money to his mother, Grandma Laub, his allotment checks. And when he got out of the service, Grandma Laub saved up the money and gave it to him and said, go in business. So he met 2 men, and I believe it was like in Martinez, California, and he went into business with them, and unfortunately they did him out of his money. So then Grandma Laub says, go in business with your first cousin Sam Laub, who was a tailor. And according to my brother Paul, he was also a milliner, sold hats. And what I figured out, that Dad might have taken $10, bought a suit and sold it for $20, and that's how he started in the men's clothing business. Can I
stop there for a minute? Mm-hmm. Okay, so I was looking for information about our father. And we had looked in the past under Google for Marcus Laub of Vallejo, California, and got information there. Then I remembered that he had been a linotype operator for a newspaper in San Francisco. And I put down Marcus Laub, San Francisco, and up came a letter from him to the newspaper. And the newspaper had put in volumes all the letters to the editors. And here was one just after World War I. And we found out from that he was in the 91st Wild West Division, who I think their motto was always ready, because that division didn't go to war, didn't fight. But he fought in the Ardennes, and he was in the, if I remember correctly, the 322nd Engineers, which is an engineering battalion for that division. The interesting thing to me was here was a 97-year-old letter that, at the time that I looked at it, since I lived in the house with him up until he died, he had never written me a letter. So this became the only letter he ever wrote to me, even though he wrote it through the newspaper.
Okay, I want to say that I thank you for reminding me that our dad won a contest. He was he worked as a linotype operator for the San Francisco Examiner, and he won a contest as the fastest linotype operator on the West Coast. And he also was very athletic, and he was a runner, as I remember. This is from my memory of what I was told. Okay.
And that's a good point. There were other documents that were available years ago, about 40 years ago. I went to the newspaper and I looked them up, and they had all about our father in that. The only problem was there was a fire later, about 20 years ago, that burnt up all this data. But he was supposed to have been the first Jew allowed into the Olympic Club He was an athlete, so he didn't pay dues. He got in on the basis of his strength. But in these stories was one very interesting story where there was a competition between the newspapers. And the newspaper that he worked for, which I had thought was the Call Bulletin, but perhaps was not, they couldn't let anyone away except for Dad. They were slammed with whatever they were slammed with. They needed everybody. They needed Dad, but they sent him out to compete against the rest of the all the other newspapers' personnel. He lost the meet by a matter of a few points. He entered into every division and lost the meet because just couldn't win them all, I guess. So that was a beautiful story. I'm sorry I don't have those documents. And this was before there was Xerox, so there was no Xerox for me to take it to.
Yeah, I want to clarify that it was not the Olympic Club as we know it. It's the San Francisco Olympic Club.
Yeah.
It was a very localized operation.
Okay.
Yeah, San Francisco Olympic Club. Okay, go ahead.
So
Okay.
Anyway, you clarified he went to the 4th grade and then he went to work, right?
Yeah, I already said the work that he did. I don't know what kind of work he did when he was in the 4th grade, but whatever way that children made money at that age, which was about 9 or 10. And then
They worked.
okay, and then
They worked.
okay, when I last left off about his work history, then I went back to so Sam Laub lived in Vallejo, so that's why our dad moved to Vallejo, California. And the stores, I remember the name of the store was The Mart on 224 Georgia Street. And then he opened another store on 423 Georgia Street, which was the Toggery. And he had that men's and boys clothing store until, until he retired. But I just want to tell you a couple things about Dad and his store. He learned a few words of every language so he could say, hello, how are you? Where it was Filipino or whatever language. Another thing I remember is Arnie and I, that's our middle brother, Arnie. He was 2 years younger than I, he was. And we used to sell in the store on Christmas vacations, and we would compete. We would get at that time a tie was $1, and we would get 5% of anything that we sold. So Arnie and I were competing to see who could make the most money. Another thing I remember about Dad was this. To me is very impressive is that the last day before Christmas, he got all of his employees together and their families, and he would bring each person up and tell what he liked about them, what he appreciated that they did for his business, and then he would give them a gift, whether there was a suit of clothes, a hat, or whatever. And to every member of their family, he gave a gift. To the wives, he gave stockings. For the children, he gave what was called mucklucks, which was a kind of a combination sock and slipper. And I was really impressed with that. I thought that was really neat, that he showed appreciation. And he had very loyal employees who I believe loved him and stayed with him for a very long time, because he must have been a good boss. And the other thing I remember is that very often before Dad would leave the store to go out to lunch or to leave for the day, he would straighten up he would straighten up all of his clothing that was laid out, the men's and boys' clothing. And all right, during the war, the Second World War, we made campaign ribbons for the servicemen. There was Mare Island Shipyard, and the stores. He kept the store open till 9 o'clock at night, so the employees at the Mare Island Shipyard could come in and buy things. He also had letters from the athletes from the high school, the lettered sweaters, you know, for the different athletes. And he used to keep stockings in the store so that if a man came in, say, to buy a suit of clothes, and he said, oh, wait a minute, I have to go get a present for my wife's birthday. He says, just a minute, I have some lady stockings here. And he would give him a pair of stockings to take home for his wife. So he, okay, then later on, he went to a picnic in San Francisco, a B'nai B'rith picnic, and he won a box of candy, and he gave it to this pretty lady. That's how he met her, our mother, Shirley. And I don't know, I might have said it already about how they met and married.
Mm-hmm.
I've already said that, okay. Then they got married on April, their religious wedding was on April 18th of 1930. And then on June 8th of 1931, they had their first child, which was me. And
When was their unofficial wedding?
April 7th, they got married in Reno. That was the story I told you before.
Yeah.
And so
they were pregnant when they got married.
no,
Well,
no.
if they got
They
married,
got
in April.
married on April 18th, 1930. I was born on June 8th, 1931.
Oh, okay, 31.
Yeah, I guarantee you my mother was strict about that. Then, okay, 2 years later, our brother Arnold.
Well, could you tell me a bit more about your father's generation? So his brothers and sisters?
Yeah, I'll be glad to.
Okay.
Okay, his oldest sister, Molly, who married a man named Lupesco, used to work sewing, and she would make buttonholes. You know, buttonholes for clothing. I remember that. She had 2 daughters, Lillian, who married a man in the service named Yohe, Y-O-H-E, and a daughter, Sally, I think was the oldest daughter. She was a university